There will never be another Minecraft mob vote ever again. The past few years, Minecraft's mob vote has been extremely controversial, getting so bad to the point that over 500,000 people voted to end it for good last year. With drama surrounding big YouTubers influencing the vote, allegations of botting and fraudulent votes, and poorly designed mobs that left the community disappointed at what they had missed out on, the mob vote has become a rather infamous time of year. And as of not even a week ago now, with Minecraft Live drawing near, and the community once again ready for another 3 candidates, out of the blue, the mob vote was cancelled for good. What happened? What did developers have to say? Why couldn't Mojang just add all 3 mobs? What went wrong with the Minecraft mob vote? If we look at the very first Minecraft mob vote all the way back in 2017, we can already see early signs of the mob vote's many later problems. As I'm sure you all know, there were 4 hostile mob concepts to choose from in the 2017 mob vote: the monster of the ocean depths, the monster of the night skies, the great hunger, and the hovering inferno. Players would vote on Twitter over the roughly 90 minutes Minecon Earth ran for, with there being 3 votes total. The monster of the night skies, or as we all infamously know it as now, the Phantom, would win. Now, there were already 3 huge problems with this system. First of all, the voting period was so brief that it excluded the majority of the Minecraft community from participating. For example, the vote occurred from 3:40 AM to 5 AM for me, meaning I couldn't participate at all, and I'm sure there were other people in very similar situations. As such, only a very small number of people voted in these polls. The second huge issue is that very often a majority of the players will not be happy. There were 4 mobs, each of which received around a quarter of the votes initially. Obviously, only 1 mob could get in though, meaning that even though there were further votes to decide the winner, roughly 3/4 of the player base's ideal mob would not be added. The majority of the players would lose, even more so because the losing 3 mobs would not be added later on. Their concepts and design were effectively canned forever, and would never see addition to the game, really adding insult to injury. And the third huge problem is one of which Mojang and the general player base would only end up discovering after the Phantom had been implemented, and that's the fact that merely showing a single sketch of the mobs with a very vague concept could lead to the mob's actual implementation not going so smoothly. When the Phantom was actually added to the game, people were very disappointed and found the mob annoying rather than terrifying. Now, that all being said, this was still the very first mob vote. It was small, new, and less serious compared to later years. Most people, while upset with the Phantom, still found it very cool that they got a say in a Minecraft update, and while some people did complain, the noise wasn't really that loud. Yet. In 2018, the vote returned, this time with Mojang learning from some of the past issues and changing things up. But first, this video is sponsored by Private Internet Access VPN, the world's most transparent VPN provider with a no-logs policy, piavpn.com/TheMisterEpic. A VPN is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection, meaning wherever you are browsing online, only the intended websites, apps, or programs get to see your information, not any malicious third party. So, browsing the internet with an unencrypted connection is like joining a Minecraft server and typing your IP address in the chat, which isn't too far from what actually happens, as whenever you join a Minecraft server, the server owners can see your IP. While this can be okay if the server is big and trustworthy, certain malicious servers can use this against you, or your IP could be caught up in a big server data leak. Private internet access protects you from both of those things happening by hiding your IP address and encrypting your internet connection. And outside of Minecraft, streaming services like Netflix block content depending on your region. You can pick from 91 different countries with private internet access, bypassing these restrictions and watching content from all over the world with just a click. Private internet access is available on all platforms on an unlimited amount of devices using the same subscription. You can sign up now and get an 83% discount at only about $2 a month with 4 extra months for free and a 30-day money-back guarantee by using my link in the description. First of all, this year was a biome vote, where you instead voted for the biome that would be next updated between deserts, savannas, and tigers. The biomes also included a mob, being meerkats, ostriches, and foxes. The key improvement here was that rather than just getting a sketch and vague description of the new mobs or biomes, we got entire animated sequences explaining the features and additions in greater detail, meaning that hopefully less players would be disappointed when the winner was actually implemented. Upon the announcement of the 2018 biome vote, players initially were upset because they thought that, like the previous year, whichever concept lost would effectively be canned for good. But also this time around, rather than the losers never being included in any update and being scrapped forever, they would instead be updated at a later date, which many players were happy about. The tiger would win and as such would be updated the following year in 1.14, but the losers, being the desert and savanna, to this day 6 years later, still have yet to be updated, with there seemingly being no plans to do so. Notably, this time around the poll got over 50,000 votes, clearly displaying that the mob and biome vote idea was becoming more popular and generating more discussion and hype around the game's updates, which was one of its intended goals. 2019 was much of the same. This time there were over 250,000 votes, with the mountain winning and being updated in caves and cliffs, swamps coming second and being updated in 1.19, and the badlands losing and still yet to be updated to this day. The reception to this vote was also very positive, although early signs of frustration at the large time period it would take for the losing biomes to be updated were evident, especially since the losers of the previous year's biome vote were still not implemented yet. Overall, things were fine though, and the mob and biome vote was turning out to be a great hype and marketing tool for Mojang. That would all change in 2020. In 2020, the mob vote would return, and with it the looming fact that the losing mobs would effectively never be added to the game and were gone forever. Furthermore, after the issues with 2017's mob vote where the winner was disappointing, I personally believe that Mojang scaled back the concepts they presented, and this is a trend you'll see continue in votes later on. In 2017, we got 4 cool, unique hostile mob boss concepts, all of which likely having a significantly different new mechanic, like the Phantom's ability to fly. But with the 2020 mob vote and votes from here on out, we would only have 3 concepts, which as you'll see were much simpler and less grand or hype, almost entirely consisting of passive mobs only. With COVID and the game's rejuvenation in popularity, the 2020 mob vote was already turning out to be the most talked about by far. Each of the 3 mobs, the Moo Bloom, the Isolager, and the Glow Squid, got its own intro animations and over 800,000 people voted. But these same problems which were present in 2017, of which the biome vote mostly fixed, returned once again, and now that the vote had over 200 times the attention the first vote did, whatever dramas and frustrations there were also going to be 200 times louder. The Glow Squid and Moo Bloom were 2 passive mobs that were comparatively boring compared to the Isolager, a very fresh mob with an entirely unique method of attacking. Feature-wise, it was objectively the mob which promised to be the most different and interesting. However, the Glow Squid would ever so slightly claim victory, potentially helped by the campaigning of some rather large YouTubers. So once again, about 2/3 of voters were left disappointed that their mob of choice lost and was gone forever. Many people such as myself were unable to vote entirely due to the brief time frame the vote ran for not fitting our time zones, and when the Glow Squid was eventually added to the game, it was extremely underwhelming. It literally didn't even glow unless you used a mod with emissive lighting such as Optifine, and the only thing it was useful for was this. Players whose mob lost were quite upset, and players whose mob won were also upset because, like the 2017 mob vote, the mob's actual implementation was disappointing, and in the case of the Glow Squid, was just so damn uninteresting. Very few people were left happy with this mob vote. It was another early sign of what was to come. That being said, the 2021 mob vote actually went okay, and this likely was because, for the first time, one of the mobs got over 50% majority of the votes. Furthermore, feature-wise, the Alley, which was the winner, actually had the most objectively unique and useful mechanics, so unlike the useless, underwhelming Glow Squids of the previous year, people were content when the Alley would be added to the game, satisfied because it did what was initially advertised. This mob vote went so well because there was one mob clearly better than the other 2 feature-wise, but that's also a double-edged sword, because if only one of the mobs is interesting or useful enough, it means the concepts we were getting were beginning to drop in quality and diversity compared to previous years. 2022, the mob vote would further improve in one specific domain, as the time restraints, which for many people locked them out of the ability to vote, were removed, and instead, players had 24 hours to vote through a server on Bedrock Edition or through the Minecraft launcher. However, there was a new problem now, and that's the fact that the three mob concepts, well, just kind of sucked. The Sniffer, the Rascal, and the Tough Golem were all relatively boring mobs, which just didn't seem to do anything noteworthy. They had some new mechanics, sure, like the Tough Golem's proposed ability to hold and display an item, but none of these mechanics were as useful or as interesting as the Isologer or even the mobs from 2017. And while there was once again a majority vote clear winner, this time people complained that the concepts were boring and underwhelming. I guess if you compare the proposed Hovering Inferno or Monster of the Deep Sea, dangerous and exciting concepts we never got to see in game and now never will, to our new winners, the Sniffer and the Glow Squid years later, it really is quite disappointing by comparison. Disappointing just like how I'm disappointed in the number of you who still aren't subscribed. Help me reach 750k subs by the end of the year, no pressure. And unfortunately, 2023 wasn't that different. In 2023, we got to pick between the Crab, a mob which let you place and break blocks from further away, the Armadillo, a mob which drops an item to craft wolf armor, and the Penguin, a mob which increases the speed of players' boats. So, Penguin, mostly useless, Armadillo limited but unique use, and the Crab potentially very interesting and good use, but also potentially disappointing like the Phantom. Realistically, it was the Armadillo versus the Crab. People got really invested in this mob vote once again, and public opinion, at least in the English-speaking community, seemed to very much favor the Crab. However, when the winners would be announced, the Armadillo came out on top by a significant margin as well, surprising many people, myself included. Now, the 2023 mob vote ended up being so controversial. Entire petitions which got over 500,000 votes were started, there were widespread vote boycotts, discussion online was more prominent than ever, accusations that Mojang was lazy were now louder than ever, and even Mojang developers would respond. I think the culmination of previous years' repeated frustrations and disappointments, combined with the fact that there were vote botting allegations that I covered here if you're curious, which by the way did actually happen, all resulted in a huge outburst from the player base. They were sick of seeing cool mob concepts they liked being canned for good. They looked at the losers and compared them to the winners and were upset that such comparatively uninteresting mobs won. They simply wanted to know, why couldn't all three mobs just be added? The outcry was so loud that Mojang developers would respond. King B-Dogs on Twitter replied to a couple posts. Most of these have since been deleted, but we have screenshots and transcripts in Reddit posts. In response to why they can't add all three mobs, King B-Dogs mentioned that the time it would take to add all three would actually lead to less content being part of normal updates because the development team would be so busy adding an extra 2 mobs. He was asked why it's so hard to add mobs, which seems so basic, to which he responded with the entire process required to add such a mob to the game. The key takeaways from this, and part of the reason why modders have it easy, are the fact that not only do Mojang have to come up with a design that holistically fits the game and is actually fun, but they also have to code it and make it function one-to-one in both Java and Bedrock, two entirely different programming languages and engines, so they basically have to make the mob twice. They also need to make sure it works on all the various Minecraft platforms and doesn't cause any performance issues on any. Then they need to get approval and sift through feedback and bugs before the mob is ready to go. I think that really helps put it into perspective. While a modder can add losing mob vote concepts to the game in only a few hours, they don't have to add it to 2 different games, and they also don't have to make sure it works on different platforms, nor do they have to conceptualize the idea and make sure it fits Minecraft and is fun in the first place. It's a much bigger process than what it seems. I think this is also why we went from 4 bigger hostile mob concepts in 2017 to the format of 3 passive mobs with less notable mechanics in later mob votes. Another dev wrote a blog post about the mob votes in general, mentioning that even they expected the Isologer to win 2020 as it was the obvious choice, and the reason the LA so easily won the 2021 vote was because it was a concept that was much more fleshed out and developed than the other 2, but overall the LA winning was positive. More importantly, the dev echoed a similar sentiment surrounding the why not add all 3 question, that being that there was simply not enough time or resources to add all 3, but also mentioning that if all 3 mobs would be added, there wouldn't even be a vote in the first place, and there would simply be another feature in yet another update. To have a mob vote, mobs have have to win and lose, I guess, but I think they definitely should have done the buy and vote method of adding the losers later on. We got more insights from further Mojang developers and staff a few months ago in this video.
Over the years, we started to see that people really, like, they liked the idea of getting to contribute to what we make in the game, but I think the problem is we started having ideas that people really got attached to. So it wasn't just like these really vague abstract concepts of things that could work, it was actually stuff that people could relate to. And I think the problem is it comes across as though like we have all three ready to go already, they're already designed, they're already coded, they're already like fully polished features, and we're just like waiting to press a button on only one of them, and then we're gonna throw out the other two.
In the mob votes from 2020 onwards, this is definitely evident. People all over Twitter and in online discussions would effectively make their online personalities the mob they wanted to win. They got super invested in the vote now that the concepts were more fleshed out compared to 2017. And of course, nobody wants to miss out. There will always be a large, often majority of the player base who won't get what they want.
Adding anything to a game is super complex. It needs to fit into the ecosystem, it needs to go into all the system, it needs to make gameplay interesting in some aspect, right?
Another good point about the fundamental issue with the vote that can't really be solved. There will always be a large, often majority of the player base who simply do not understand the process behind game development and what it entails, and as such will never truly accept the rational reasoning behind why all three mobs can't be added.
We need to reach a certain quality for all different ways you play, like if you play on a console, if you play on touch, on PC, Bedrock and Java. So it's a lot of kind of process and work.
Once again, the devs echo the same sentiment behind the work required to add all the mobs to each platform. So, that brings us to today. Everybody expected the mob vote to go ahead as usual this year once again, but as of not even a week ago now, in a post surrounding the future of Minecraft's development and upcoming changes, it was announced that the mob vote was officially being retired. It seems there won't be a mob vote ever again. There was no explanation, besides the fact that the format of Minecraft Live, where the mob vote winner is normally announced, is being changed from once a year to twice a year, so we can't cite the exact reason for the mob vote's removal. But it's likely that the previous year's community outrage, negative attention and drama, of which the player base won't ever understand the rationale behind their once lack of feasibility, meant that Mojang realized it likely wasn't worth it anymore. In my opinion, if they had promised to add the losing mobs later on as they did with the buy-in votes, much of the outrage could have been avoided, but also that alone may not be feasible, as even the majority of the losing content from 2018 and 2019 is still not yet added, and creating an even greater backlog of content they need to add might not be a good idea. I for one am disappointed. I personally enjoyed the drama and discussion that happened every year and loved making videos about it, but I guess it's very different when you are actually part of the drama, not spectating from the sidelines. I do wonder if they will ever find a replacement for the interactivity the mob vote enabled, or if the small yearly influence we had on the game is now gone for good. I guess the mob vote petitioners and boycotters from last year sort of ended up getting what they wanted. Make sure to check out Private Internet Access VPN with my link below. Be sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching.